Day checked his watch for the third time that morning. His hands felt sweaty as he held his son's tiny hand. Beside him, his wife Vera carried a small backpack filled with Minho's favorite toys. They stood outside the large glass doors of the Galactic Coalition's first integrated childcare facility on Station Harmony 7. "You ready, buddy?" Day asked, crouching down to look at his 3-year-old son. Minho nodded enthusiastically, his dark eyes wide with excitement. He had been talking about nothing else for days. Real alien friends, real alien toys, real alien snacks. The doors slid open with a soft whoosh. Inside, the facility looked like something from a dream. Colors that Day didn't have names for decorated the walls. Strange geometric shapes served as chairs and tables. And standing in the center of it all was Tixavrayan, the daycare administrator. Tixavrayan looked like a giant praying mantis, but with 6 arms instead of 4 limbs. Her compound eyes glittered as she clicked her mandibles in what Day had learned was a friendly greeting. Her translator device hummed to life. "Welcome, welcome. You must be the Kim family, and this must be little Minho." Minho stared up at her with his mouth open. Then he smiled. "You're so cool." Tixavrayan's antennae twitched with pleasure. "Thank you, small human. Please come in. We have much to discuss before Minho can join the other children." They followed her to a small office. The chairs adjusted automatically to fit human proportions, which Day found both convenient and slightly unsettling. Tixavrayan pulled up several holographic displays. "Now then," she began, her voice taking on a serious tone. "We have very strict safety protocols here. Children from 47 different species attend this facility. Each species has different biological needs and vulnerabilities." Vera leaned forward. "We understand. We filled out all the forms about Minho's dietary needs and medical history." Yes, very thorough." Tixavrayan's mandibles clicked rapidly. "But I must show you our restricted items list. These substances are extremely dangerous and must be kept away from all children at all times." A long list appeared in the holographic display. Day started reading and felt his stomach drop. Chocolate, grapes, caffeine, alliums, xylitol, capsaicin, salt above certain concentrations. "Wait," Day said slowly. "These are all Earth foods." "Precisely." Tixavrayan's antennae stood straight up. "Your planet's consumables are extraordinarily toxic to most species. The capsaicin alone could kill a Vrelian child in minutes. Chocolate contains theobromine, which causes cardiac failure in 32 known species. Even your water has mineral concentrations that would sicken a Quellian." Vera squeezed Day's hand. They had known Earth was different, but seeing it laid out like this made them realize just how different. "Don't worry," Tixavrayan continued, seeming to sense their concern. "We have a special snack area for Minho with approved human foods. He will be perfectly safe here." After signing several more documents and receiving a tour of the facility, they finally said goodbye to Minho. He barely noticed them leave, already distracted by a floating toy that changed colors. Tixavrayan watched the small human child with careful attention. In her 70 years of child care work across 12 different worlds, she had never been nervous about a child before. But humans were new to the Coalition. There was so much they didn't know about them. Minho wandered around the play area, touching everything with curious fingers. A small Quellian child, Bormak's daughter, oozed over to investigate the newcomer. She was essentially a blob of translucent gel with 2 eye spots. "Hello," Minho said. "I'm Minho. Wanna play?" The Quellian child jiggled, which Tixavrayan knew meant yes. The 2 children began a game that seemed to involve rolling a ball back and forth. Tixavrayan relaxed slightly. Perhaps this would be fine after all. Then Minho stood up. His attention had been caught by something across the room, the quarantine snack area. Tixavrayan had specifically placed it on the opposite side of the room from the human play zone. It contained foods for species with very specific dietary needs, foods that were sealed in individual containers, foods that were absolutely not for human consumption. Minho toddled toward it with the single-minded determination that only a 3-year-old could possess. "Small human, Minho, please return to the play area," Tixavrayan called out, moving toward him quickly. But human children, she was learning, were fast. Minho reached the quarantine area and his eyes locked onto something. A Vrelian spike fruit. It was purple and covered in barbs that glistened with a toxin that caused paralysis in most species. It was kept in a special sealed container specifically because it was so dangerous. Somehow Minho had opened the container. Perhaps the lock was designed for claws and mandibles, not small human fingers. He grabbed the fruit, barbs and all, and took a big bite. Tixavran's world seemed to slow down. Bormak, who had been organizing toys in the corner, let out a sound like a wet gasp. Every alarm in Tixavran's head was screaming. She rushed forward, her 6 arms reaching for the child. Drop it! Drop it right now! Minho looked up at her, juice running down his chin. His eyes watered slightly. He chewed and swallowed. It's spicy, he announced with a giggle. Tixavran scooped him up, fruit and all, and slammed her emergency alert button. Medical team to daycare 1. Immediate emergency. Human child has consumed Vrelian spike fruit. I repeat, human child has ingested Class 7 paralytic toxin. Minho squirmed in her grip. But I'm not done yet. The medical team arrived in under 30 seconds. They came with stretchers, emergency equipment, and enough antitoxin to treat a full-grown Vrelian adult. They surrounded Minho, scanning him with various devices. Vital signs? The lead medic barked. Heart rate elevated, but within normal parameters for a human child, another responded. No signs of respiratory distress. No paralysis. No tissue damage. No. Wait, that can't be right. What? Tixavran demanded, still holding Minho, who was now trying to reach for the rest of the spike fruit. He's completely fine. There's trace amounts of the toxin in his system, but his body it's just processing it. Like it's food. The lead medic looked at Minho with something like awe and horror mixed together. How are you feeling, small human? Good. But my mouth is tingly. Like when Daddy lets me eat the hot peppers. Minho grinned. Can I have more? Absolutely not, Tixavran said firmly. The medical team spent the next hour monitoring Minho. He showed no signs of distress. In fact, he seemed energized, playing with even more enthusiasm than before. The only visible effect was that his cheeks were slightly red and he asked for water twice. When Day and Vera returned to pick him up at the end of the day, Tixavran had a 30-page incident report ready. She also had questions. So many questions. How? She asked simply. How is he alive? Day and Vera exchanged glances. Vera spoke first. We're really sorry. We should have warned you. Human children are. Well, they're pretty tough. They have to be. Earth is a difficult world. Difficult? Tixavran's voice rose. Your child consumed enough toxin to kill 15 Vrelians and he called it spicy. Yeah, that sounds about right, Day said apologetically. His grandfather feeds him raw peppers as snacks. Tixavran sat down heavily, her legs suddenly feeling weak. She looked at little Minho, who was happily showing his mother a drawing he had made. She was going to need to update every single protocol they had. Starting tonight. 2 weeks had passed since the spike fruit incident. Tixavran had spent every evening updating safety protocols, adding new warning labels and installing additional locks on the quarantine snack area. The locks were now designed to resist human finger manipulation. She felt confident that things would be better. Then Jiwon arrived with her daughter Hyun. The 2-year-old human girl had wide, curious eyes and pudgy hands that reached for everything. Jiwon, a diplomatic liaison for the human delegation, smiled apologetically as she filled out the admission forms. I heard about the spike fruit thing, Jiwon said. Don't worry. Hyun is usually pretty calm. She mostly just likes to look at things. Tixavran wanted to believe her. She really did. The daycare had planned a special field trip that day. The station's botanical gardens had agreed to host the children for an educational tour. Zelnorth, the curator, was a plant-based species who looked like a walking tree with flowering branches for arms. He had assured Tixavran that the tour would only include the safest, most boring plants in the entire collection. Absolutely nothing dangerous, Zelnorth had promised. Just some nice ferns, a few colorful mosses, and some glowing mushrooms that the children always enjoy. The group arrived at the gardens in the late morning. Besides Minho and Hyun, There were 12 other children from various species. Bormak and 2 other caregivers came along to help supervise. The gardens were beautiful. Massive domes of transparent material let in artificial sunlight. Inside, plants from 100 worlds grew in carefully controlled environments. Some sections were sealed behind thick barriers with warning signs in 40 languages. Zell North greeted them at the entrance, his leaves rustling with enthusiasm. Welcome, young saplings. Today you will learn about the wonderful diversity of plant life in our galaxy. He led them to a safe viewing area filled with soft, harmless ferns. The children were allowed to touch them gently. Minho immediately started petting a large blue fern, delighted by its fuzzy texture. Where's the dangerous stuff? Minho asked innocently. Zell North's branches stiffened. The dangerous specimens are in sealed sections. Very sealed, with multiple security systems that no child could ever access. Why are they dangerous? Hyun asked, speaking up for the first time. Well, small humans, some plants produce toxins or have thorns that inject venom or release pollen that can... Zell North stopped himself. But we don't talk about those. We look at nice, safe ferns. Ticks of Rain noticed that both human children were now staring in the direction of the sealed sections with intense interest. She made a mental note to watch them extra carefully. The tour continued. They saw glowing mushrooms that made the children gasp with delight. They observed slow-moving vine creatures that were technically animals but looked like plants. They learned about flowers that changed colors based on the time of day. Everything was going perfectly. Then Ticks of Rain did a head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 13. There should be 14. Where's Hyun? She asked, her voice sharp with panic. Ji-won, who had come along on the field trip, went pale. She was right here a second ago. Everyone started searching. They looked behind ferns, under mushroom caps, inside viewing tunnels. No, Hyun. Oh, no, Zell North whispered. Oh, no. What? Ticks of Rain demanded. The security barrier to Section 7, it's been opened. But that's impossible. It requires a 12-digit code and palm print verification. They ran toward Section 7. The barrier door stood open, just wide enough for a small child to squeeze through. Inside was a field of the most beautiful flowers Tix Ran had ever seen. They were deep purple with silver streaks, and they seemed to shimmer in the light. Sitting in the middle of them, covered head to toe in silver pollen, was Hyun. She was making a flower chain, humming a little song to herself. Necrobloom flowers. Zell North's voice was barely a whisper. The pollen dissolves organic tissue. It's fatal to 97% of known species. Tixfrin hit her emergency alert again. It was becoming a familiar action. The medical team was probably getting tired of rushing to wherever the human children were. Hyun, sweetie, don't move, Ji-won called out, trying to keep her voice calm even though her face showed pure terror. Hyun looked up and smiled. Pretty flowers, Mommy. Look, I made a necklace. She held up her creation. It was actually quite well made for a 2-year-old. The purple and silver flowers were woven together in an intricate pattern. That's very nice, baby. Now please come out slowly. Hyun stood up, brushing pollen off her clothes. This sent up a cloud of the glittering substance. Bormak, who had started to move forward to help, quickly backed away. Even through his gelatinous body, the pollen could cause damage. Hyun walked out calmly, still holding her flower chain. She sneezed 3 times in quick succession. Bless you, she said to herself, then sneezed again. The medical team arrived. They had brought hazmat suits this time. They approached Hyun carefully, scanning her from a distance first. The pollen concentration on her skin and clothes is enough to kill a Vrelian in under a minute, one medic reported. Then why isn't she dead? Another asked. I don't know. Her skin shows slight irritation, similar to mild contact dermatitis, but there's no tissue dissolution at all. Her body is treating it like seasonal allergies. Ji-won moved forward despite the medic's protests. She took her daughter's hand. Are you okay, sweetie? Does anything hurt? My nose is tickly, Hyun said. She sneezed again. And my eyes are watery. But the flowers were so pretty. While the medical team was busy with Hyun, Tixfran did another head count. 1, 2, 3, 12. Oh no, where's Minho? They found him 30 seconds later in Section 9, sitting under a thornbark tree eating the seeds straight from a fallen pod. Each seed was the size of a grape and contained a neurotoxin so potent that most species used it for manufacturing industrial poison. Minho. Tixfran practically screamed. He looked up, his cheeks full of seeds like a chipmunk. He swallowed and made a face. These are too crunchy. Don't you have any soft snacks? Those are lethal. They're supposed to kill you. Tixavran was beyond panic now. She had entered a realm of pure disbelief. They taste weird, Minho admitted. But I was hungry. He held up the pod. Do you want some? The medical team rushed over, but by now they seemed less panicked and more academically curious. They scanned Minho while he continued to complain about the texture of the seeds. His neural activity is completely normal, one medic said. The toxin is present in his digestive system, but it's being broken down by stomach acid before it can enter his bloodstream. Human stomach acid must be incredibly strong, another medic murmured, making notes on a datapad. Day arrived to pick up Minho an hour later. He found his son sitting in the medical observation area, happily coloring a picture while 3 doctors watched him like he was the most fascinating thing they had ever seen. Let me guess, Day said tiredly. He ate something he wasn't supposed to? He consumed enough neurotoxin to kill a full-grown Vrelian warrior, Tixavran said flatly. And he complained about the texture, Day sighed. Yeah, he's a picky eater. Did he at least have fun on the field trip? Tixavran stared at him. Then she started to laugh. It came out as clicking and chittering sounds, but it was definitely laughter, the kind that bordered on hysteria. Fun? Yes, I suppose he had fun. We all had a very educational experience today. That evening, Tixavran submitted her report to the Coalition Safety Board. It was now 63 pages long. She also added a personal note at the end, requesting emergency review of Earth classification status. Current rating as moderate risk planet appears to be significant underestimation. Human children possess unexplained resistance to multiple classes of toxins, venoms, and allergens. Recommend immediate study of human biology and possible reclassification of Earth as Class 4 Death World. She hit send and poured herself a drink. It was going to be a long career. 1 month after the garden incident, the daycare organized a cultural exchange day. The idea was simple and wholesome. Each species would bring traditional foods from their homeworld to share with the other children. It would be a celebration of diversity and unity. Tixavran had reviewed every single food item that would be brought. She had checked them against toxicity databases. She had consulted with medical experts. She had done everything possible to ensure that this event would be safe and incident-free. She had not, however, accounted for the humans wanting to participate. Boram arrived early that morning with her 4-year-old son, Junho. Junho was the oldest of the human children at the daycare, and he had strong opinions about fairness. Why can't we bring human snacks? Junho asked, crossing his arms. Everyone else gets to share their food. Well, Tixavran began carefully, human foods are special. They contain substances that could be harmful to other species. But we want to share too, Junho insisted. It's not fair if we can't participate. Boram gave Tixavran an apologetic look. He's been talking about this all week. The other human parents and I discussed it. We understand if it's too complicated, but we did bring some items just in case. Tixavran felt a headache forming. She didn't actually have a head in the human sense, but somehow these children were giving her one anyway. What did you bring? She asked with deep suspicion. Boram pulled out containers from her bag. Just some basic things. Peanut butter sandwiches, strawberries, cookies with chocolate chips, and some mint chocolate candy. Each word made Tixavran's antennae droop further. Peanuts cause fatal allergic reactions in 40 species. Strawberries contain compounds that trigger histamine responses. Chocolate has theobromine. Mint contains menthol, which can cause respiratory problems. And all of that together. Tixavran felt faint, please, Junho asked, using the weapon that small children across the galaxy had perfected. Big, pleading eyes. Against her better judgment, Tixavran found herself agreeing. Fine, but the human snacks stay at a separate table, with warning signs, in multiple languages, and no other species' children are allowed near them without explicit parental permission and medical supervision. The other human parents arrived with their children. Day and Vera brought Minho, who immediately ran to the snack table to investigate. Jiwan brought Hyun, who was still occasionally sneezing from the flower pollen exposure weeks ago. The cultural exchange began beautifully. A Quellian family brought nutrient gel in various colors. A Clythene family contributed crispy insect wafers. A Vrelian family offered mineral stones that slowly dissolved on the tongue. Each food was strange and wonderful in its own way. The children sampled foods that were appropriate for their biology. The adults chatted and shared stories. It was exactly what Tixvran had hoped for. Then a small Vrelian child named Crix wandered over to look at the human snack table. The warning signs were prominent, but Crix couldn't read yet. He just saw colorful foods that looked interesting. "What's that?" Crix asked, pointing at the peanut butter sandwiches. Junho, eager to share, picked up a sandwich. "It's peanut butter. It's really good." "You spread it on bread and—" "Stop!" Crix's parent rushed over, grabbing their child and pulling him back. "Don't touch that. It's human food." The parent's voice was loud enough that everyone turned to look. Suddenly, all the non-human parents were herding their children away from the human snack table. Some looked frightened. Others looked disgusted. A few looked at the human children with something like pity. "Is human food really that bad?" a Quellian parent whispered to another. Tixvran decided to take control of the situation. She pulled up the chemical analysis of the human snacks on a holographic display for everyone to see. "These are the components of the human foods," she announced. "As you can see, peanuts contain proteins that cause anaphylactic shock in many species. Strawberries have high levels of salicylic acid. The chocolate contains caffeine and theobromine, both of which are cardiac stimulants. The mint has menthol, which can cause neurological distress." The room went silent. Everyone stared at the human children who were happily munching on these deadly snacks. "You feed your children cardiac stimulants?" a crystalline parent asked in horror. "And neurological irritants?" another added. Vera stepped forward. "I know it sounds bad when you put it that way, but these are completely normal foods on Earth. Human children eat them all the time." "Your planet must be terrifying," someone whispered. Minho, who had been eating a chocolate chip cookie, walked up to Crix. "Want to trade snacks? I'll try your mineral stone if you try my cookie." Before anyone could stop him, the trade was made. Minho popped the mineral stone into his mouth and started sucking on it. "Tastes like a rock," he declared, but kept it in his mouth anyway. Crix bit into the chocolate chip cookie. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then Crix's eyes widened. His scales started changing colors rapidly. He began to shake. "Medic!" Crix's parents screamed. The medical team, who had learned to simply stay nearby whenever human children were present, rushed over. They immediately began treating Crix for caffeine and theobromine poisoning. "His heart rate is dangerously elevated," one medic reported. "His neural activity is erratic. We need to flush his system immediately." While they worked on Crix, another medic scanned Minho. The mineral stone he was eating contained high concentrations of copper and sulfur compounds that should have been toxic to mammalian life. "How is he not poisoned?" the medic asked. "It just tastes like a rock," Minho repeated, finally spitting it out. "Not good." Crix recovered after treatment, but the incident had thoroughly killed the festive mood of the cultural exchange. The non-human parents gathered their children and their foods and left quickly. Several mentioned that perhaps integrated cultural activities were premature. Tixvran sat down heavily after everyone had gone. The human families remained, helping to clean up. "I'm sorry," Borum said quietly. "We shouldn't have pushed to include human foods. We just wanted Junho to feel included." "It's not your fault," Tixvran said, though her voice was tired. "I should have realized. It's not just that human children can tolerate toxins. It's that what humans consider normal food is toxic to everyone else. Earth is different," Day acknowledged. "We evolved there. We adapted to it. I guess we never realized just how different until we met all of you." Junho looked sad. "Are we going to get kicked out of daycare?" "Because we're too dangerous?" That question hit Tixvran hard. She looked at the small human boy with his worried expression and felt something shift in her understanding. "No," she said firmly. "You're not dangerous. You're just different. And different doesn't mean wrong." That night, the Galactic news networks picked up the story. Videos of Minho eating the spike fruit and Hyun covered in necrobloom pollen circulated across the network. Some commentators called for human children to be segregated. Others marveled at human resilience. The most popular headline read simply, "Human children, adorable biohazards?" In her office, Tixvran wrote her latest incident report. It was now 147 pages long, but she also wrote a separate document, addressed to the Coalition Council. "The issue is not that human children are dangerous," she wrote. "The issue is that we do not yet understand human biology well enough to safely integrate them. This is a knowledge gap, not an insurmountable problem. I recommend the establishment of a human biology research initiative and updated safety protocols that account for human durability rather than trying to protect them from dangers they are naturally resistant to, so I attached all her incident reports, medical scans, and observations. Then she added a final note. Despite multiple incidents, not a single human child has been harmed while in our care. The same cannot be said for non-human children exposed to human items. This suggests that the real safety concern is protecting non-humans from human things, not the other way around. This represents a significant shift in how we approach integration. She sent the report and hoped someone would listen. The human children deserved a chance. They deserved to be understood, not feared, even if they did eat things that could kill most other species in the galaxy. 2 months after the cultural exchange disaster, the Coalition Engineering Corps delivered their solution. They had spent weeks designing what they called universal safe playground equipment. It had been tested against extreme temperatures, massive pressure, and significant impact. According to the engineers, it was absolutely foolproof. Tixfrayan stood in the new playground area, looking at the gleaming equipment with doubt. The Coalition engineers had been very proud of their work, but they had never actually met human children. A new family was joining the daycare that day. Nari arrived with her 3-year-old daughter Unbi, who had more energy than a solar reactor. The little girl bounced on her toes constantly, her eyes darting everywhere looking for adventure. "Thank you for accepting us," Nari said. She was a medical researcher who had specifically requested a position on the station to study cross-species medicine. "I've read all the incident reports. I promise I'll help however I can. Just keep your daughter away from anything that other species might eat, touch, or breathe near," Tixfrayan said wearily. "And prepare yourself. Today we're testing the new playground." The playground was impressive. There were climbing structures made of smart material that adjusted firmness based on the climber's weight. There were slides with variable friction to accommodate different body types. There were swings that automatically limited their arc to prevent dangerous speeds. Everything had been designed with safety as the absolute priority. The non-human children approached the playground with appropriate caution. They climbed slowly, testing each handhold. They slid down the slides at controlled speeds. They swung gently, enjoying the motion without pushing the limits. Then Hyun arrived. The 2-year-old took one, looked at the climbing structure and started ascending it at a speed that made Tixfrayan's biological alarm system scream. She went up and up past the height that the structure had been tested for, past the point where the safety engineers had assumed no child would ever climb. "Hyun, that's too high," Ji-won called from below, but she didn't sound particularly worried. She sounded like a parent who had seen this many times before. Hyun reached the very top of the structure, about 15 feet above the padded ground. She stood up on a narrow beam, balancing perfectly, and waved. "Hi, Mommy." Every non-human parent in the playground rushed to pull their children away from the structure. What if this tiny human fell? What if she knocked someone else off? What if her reckless behavior encouraged other children to take risks? But Hyun didn't fall. She climbed down with the same speed and confidence, laughing the whole time. Minho arrived next. He immediately noticed that there was a hanging bar system that let children swing from one platform to another. The system was designed so that children could hang for a few seconds before their grip strength gave out, forcing them to drop safely to the padded ground below. Minho grabbed the first bar and started swinging. He went from bar to bar, building momentum. Then he hung upside down from his knees, his hands free, grinning at the world from an inverted perspective. "How long has he been hanging there?" one of the engineering observers asked, checking his datapad. 47 seconds, another replied. The equipment was tested to support hanging for a maximum of 30 seconds before automatic grip assist activates. Why isn't the grip assist activating? Because he's not holding with his hands. He's hanging from his knees. That wasn't in the test parameters. Minho hung there for 2 full minutes before finally flipping down, landing perfectly on his feet, and running off to try something else. Junho arrived with Borum. He immediately began testing the slide, but not by sliding down it. He climbed up it. The surface was designed to be frictionless in one direction, but Junho found handholds in the edges and pulled himself up against the intended direction of use. "That's not how slides work," Tixfrayan said weakly. "Tell him that." Borum replied with a smile. Then Yunbi arrived, and the playground learned what true chaos looked like. She ran directly to the highest platform about 12 feet up. Before anyone could react, she jumped. She didn't climb down. She didn't slide down. She just jumped. Time seemed to slow. Every adult in the playground screamed or made their species equivalent sound of alarm. The smart padding below activated, thickening to maximum density to absorb impact. Yunbi hit the padding and bounced. She landed on her bottom, laughed, and immediately ran to do it again. Yunbi, no, Nari called out, but she was laughing too. Well, maybe just a few more times. A security consultant named Voxelin had been observing the playground testing. Voxelin was a crystalline species, rigid and logical, who had been hired to analyze safety protocols. She approached Tixvran with her data pad full of notes. "This is fascinating," Voxelin said in her chiming voice. "The human children are not simply playing. They are actively seeking out dangerous scenarios." "Tell me something I don't know," Tixvran muttered. "But look at the pattern," Voxelin continued, displaying her data. Hyun climbed beyond the safe zone, but she improved her balance and spatial awareness. Minyo hung upside down, strengthening his core muscles and testing his body's limits. Chunyo problem-solved how to climb an unclimbable surface, and Yunbi is repeatedly experiencing controlled falls, teaching her body how to absorb impact. Tixvran looked at the data and then at the human children. They were laughing, challenging each other, pushing boundaries. And yes, they were getting small injuries. Scraped knees, bumped elbows, minor bruises, but they weren't crying about these injuries. They barely seemed to notice them. "On most civilized worlds," Voxelin said quietly, "what we're witnessing would be considered child endangerment. Parents who allowed their children to take such risks would be investigated, but the human parents aren't stopping them," Tixvran observed. "They're watching carefully, ready to help if needed, but they're not preventing the risky behavior." As if to prove this point, Yunbi fell off a climbing structure, scraped her knee, and ran to her mother. Nari examined the injury, applied a small bandage, gave her daughter a hug and said, "Okay, be more careful next time. Go play." And Yunbi ran back to the exact same climbing structure to try again. This is their learning method, Voxelin realized. Human children learn through controlled risk. They hurt themselves in small ways to learn how to avoid hurting themselves in big ways. A Quellian parent nearby overheard this and oozed over. "But that's barbaric. Children should be protected from all harm." "Should they?" Nari asked, joining the conversation. "Or should they learn how to handle harm while they're still small and the stakes are low?" The Quellian parent looked at her in shock. "You want your children to be hurt?" "No," Nari said firmly. "I want my children to learn resilience. I want them to understand their body's capabilities and limits. I want them to know that small injuries heal and that failure is part of learning, because someday they'll face real danger, and when that happens, I want them to be prepared, not protected." This sparked a debate among the parents. Some species believed in complete protection. Others were starting to see the logic in the human approach. The conversation grew heated, with translators working overtime. Meanwhile, the human children had invented a new game. They were deliberately falling off things to see who could land the most dramatically. Chunho won by doing a completely unnecessary forward roll after landing. Tixvran watched this and felt something shift in her understanding once again. She had been trying to protect the human children. She had been treating them like they were fragile. But they weren't fragile at all. "Voxelin," she said slowly, "what if we've been approaching this all wrong?" "Explain." "We've been trying to make human children fit into our safety standards. But human children were shaped by different standards. Harsher standards. Earth," Voxelin said, understanding. "Let me access the planetary database." She pulled up Earth's information. They read it together, and with each line the picture became clearer. Gravity, 1.3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric oxygen 21% higher than most habitable worlds. Weather patterns, extreme, including violent storms, temperature fluctuations, and natural disasters. Microbial diversity, extraordinarily high, requiring constant immune system activity. Predators, numerous and varied throughout most ecosystems. Earth is classified as a moderate-risk planet, Voxelin read. But this data suggests it should be classified much higher. The humans probably downplayed it during the entry negotiations, Tixvran said. They think their planet is normal because they've never known anything else. They watched Minho attempt to balance on a narrow beam while Hyun tried to knock him off by throwing soft foam balls. He dodged and weaved, laughing the whole time. When he finally fell, he just got up and switched places with Hyun. "They're not just durable," Tixavran said softly. "They're designed for a world that constantly tries to kill them. A world where children need to be tough to survive." That evening, Tixavran called an emergency meeting with the Coalition Safety Board. She presented her findings, supported by Voxlin's data and Nari's medical insights. "We need to reclassify Earth," she concluded. "And we need to completely rethink how we approach human integration. These children don't need the same protections as other species. They need different accommodations entirely." The board members looked at each other. Finally, the head of the board spoke. "You're suggesting we create separate standards for humans?" "No," Tixavran said firmly. "I'm suggesting we acknowledge that humans are different and adjust our approach accordingly. We can't treat them like fragile species that need constant protection. We need to understand their resilience and work with it, not against it." She pulled up footage of the playground. "Look at them. They're happy. They're learning. They're growing. And yes, they're taking risks. But those risks are calculated and supervised. The human parents know what they're doing." The meeting lasted 3 hours. When it ended, Tixavran had authorization to develop new protocols specifically for human children. Protocols that acknowledge their unique biology and their different approach to learning. It was a start. 3 months after the playground incident, Tixavran found herself standing in the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Coalition. The chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of species. Today it was filled to capacity. Everyone wanted to hear about the human problem. Beside her stood all the human families from the daycare. Day and Vera held Minho's hands. Jiwon had Hyun on her hip. Boram kept a gentle hand on Junho's shoulder. Nari stood with Yunbi, who was somehow standing completely still for the first time in her life. Sensing the importance of the moment, Admiral Korthvan, the Coalition Security Director, called the session to order. He was a massive being, almost 12 feet tall, with armor-plated skin and 4 arms. His species had evolved as apex predators, and he still carried that presence. "We are here today to discuss the integration of humanity into coalition society, specifically regarding their offspring," Korthvan announced. "Administrator Tixavran, please present your findings." Tixavran stepped forward. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Her presentation was comprehensive, detailed, and backed by extensive data. She pulled up holographic displays showing every incident, every medical scan, every observation from the past 6 months. In summary, she concluded, human children have consumed Class 7 paralytic toxins, been exposed to tissue-dissolving pollen, ingested neurotoxins, and suffered numerous physical impacts that would severely injure or kill children from most other species. In every case, the human children recovered quickly or showed no symptoms at all. The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives whispered to each other, some in fear, others in fascination. Dr. Silmara, chair of the Xenobiological Ethics Committee, stood up. She was a gaseous being contained in a specialized suit, her voice emanating from a translator device. "Administrator Tixavran, are you suggesting that human children pose a danger to other species' children?" "No," Tixavran said firmly. "I'm suggesting we've been misunderstanding the situation entirely. We've been trying to protect human children when we should have been learning from them." "Explain," Korthvan commanded. Tixavran pulled up Earth's planetary data. When humanity applied to join the coalition, Earth was classified as a moderate-risk planet. But let's look at the actual data. She highlighted key statistics. Gravity exceeds standard by 30%. Atmospheric oxygen is at the high end of breathable ranges. Weather systems include violent phenomena that occur regularly. The planet experiences tectonic activity, volcanic eruptions, and massive storms. The microbial diversity is so high that humans are in constant biological warfare with their own environment. She paused, letting the data sink in, and perhaps most tellingly, Earth's fossil record shows 5 major extinction events. Despite this, life has persisted and evolved to be extraordinarily resilient. A representative from the Relian Assembly spoke up. "Are you saying Earth should be reclassified as a high-risk world?" "I'm saying Earth should be reclassified as a Class 4 death world," Tixavran stated clearly. The chamber went silent. Death world was not a term used lightly. It meant a planet so hostile that only the most adapted species could survive there. There were only 17 confirmed death worlds in the known galaxy, and most were considered too dangerous for colonization. That seems extreme, another representative said. Humans seem perfectly civilized. They are civilized, Nari stepped forward to speak. But civilization doesn't change our biology. We evolved on a planet that required us to be tough. Our children need to learn resilience because Earth teaches it from birth. She pulled up medical data from her own research. Human immune systems are extraordinarily aggressive because they have to be. Human pain tolerance is higher than most species because minor injuries are common on Earth. Human children heal quickly from small wounds because they get small wounds frequently. We're not trying to hurt our children, Vera added, speaking for the first time. We're preparing them for reality. Because on Earth, reality is harsh. Junho, who had been quiet until now, tugged on his mother's hand. Can I say something? Boram nodded and Junho stepped forward. His small voice echoed through the chamber. I don't understand why everyone thinks normal things are scary, he said. I like playing with my friends at daycare. I like trying new foods. I like climbing high and running fast. Why is that bad? The simple question from a 4-year-old child somehow cut through all the complex debate. Dr. Silmara floated down to Junho's level. It's not bad, young human, she said gently. It's just different from what we're used to. And different can be frightening. But different can also be good, Junho replied. Right? Before Dr. Silmara could answer, Minho walked up to a nearby Vrelian representative. He held out a small wrapped package. This is for Crix, Minho said. I'm sorry he got sick from the cookie. I made him a card. He held up a colorful drawing. And my mommy helped me find a snack that's safe for Vrelians. It's not a cookie, but I hope he likes it. The Vrelian representative took the package with shaking hands. His species had no tear ducts, but his voice was thick with emotion. Thank you, small human. This is very kind. The gesture seemed to break something open in the chamber. Representatives began talking, not in fear, but in curiosity. If human children can eat our toxins, could they help us develop better antidotes? If they can withstand impacts better, could they teach our engineers about resilience? If they heal quickly from minor injuries, what can their medicine teach us? Admiral Korthovan raised one massive hand for silence. It seems we have been approaching this situation incorrectly. We viewed human durability as a problem to be contained rather than a difference to be understood. He looked directly at the human families. I apologize. We treated your children as threats when we should have treated them as the pioneers they are. They are the first of their kind to grow up in our society. That was never going to be easy. Tixfran stepped forward again. I propose the following. First, we reclassify Earth as a Class 4 death world which more accurately reflects its nature. Second, we establish human durability zones in integrated spaces where human children can engage in activities appropriate for their biology without alarming other species. Third, we create a human cultural exchange program where other species can gradually learn about human capabilities in a controlled, educational environment. And fourth, Nari added, we allow human families to teach other species about our approach to child rearing, not as the right way, but as one valid way among many. Dr. Silmara considered this. You're suggesting that other species' children could benefit from human methods? Maybe, Day said carefully. Or maybe not. Every species is different. But perhaps there's a middle ground. Maybe some children from other species would benefit from a bit more challenge, a bit more risk. Under supervision, of course. A small voice came from the back of the human group. Hyun was tugging on her mother's hand. Mommy, I'm hungry. Jiwon smiled and pulled out a small container of strawberries. The entire chamber tensed. Hyun ate one, and nothing happened because, of course, nothing would happen to a human child eating strawberries. A young Quellian in the audience, Bormak's daughter, oozed forward. Can I try? Her parents started to pull her back, but Bormak stopped them. Let her try. A small piece. Under medical supervision. One of the medics present carefully gave the young Quellian a tiny fragment of strawberry, smaller than a seed. She ingested it and everyone watched. Her translucent body showed no negative reaction. It's sweet, she said with wonder. And tangy. I like it. Not all species will be able to tolerate human foods, Nari cautioned. But some might. In small amounts. With proper testing and supervision, this could open up new experiences for everyone. The session continued for hours. Plans were made. Protocols were established. Research initiatives were approved. As the meeting finally adjourned, Tixavran found herself surrounded by the human children. They had been remarkably patient, but now they were restless. "Can we go play now?" Yunbi asked. "Yes," Tixavran said with a clicking laugh. "Yes, you can go play." The children ran off to a designated play area nearby, and Tixavran watched them with new understanding. They weren't dangerous. They weren't fragile. They were simply human, shaped by a world that demanded strength and rewarded resilience. 6 months later, the changes were visible throughout the station. Human durability zones had been established where human children could climb, run, and play with the intensity their biology demanded. But these zones weren't isolated. They had viewing areas where other species' children could watch and, if their parents approved and medical staff supervised, gradually try human-style activities. The cultural exchange program was a surprising success. Some Clithian children discovered they enjoyed climbing higher than their cautious parents had ever allowed. A few Quellian children found that controlled risks helped them develop decision-making skills. Even some Vrelian children participated, though always with extensive safety equipment. More importantly, the non-human children learned something valuable from their human friends. They learned that failure wasn't fatal, that small injuries could heal, that trying something difficult and failing was better than never trying at all. Tixavran had been promoted to Director of Human Coalition Childhood Integration. It was a new position, created specifically to manage the unique challenges and opportunities that human integration presented. One afternoon, she watched as Minho carefully taught a young Clithian named Tick how to go down a slide. Not the normal way, but head first. "You have to tuck your arms," Minho explained seriously, "and keep your legs straight. It's faster this way." Tick was terrified but determined. With Minho's encouragement and Tixavran's supervision, he tried it. He went down the slide head first, screaming the whole way, and landed in a laughing heap at the bottom. "Again!" Tick shouted immediately. "I want to go again." In another corner of the playground, Yunbi was sharing her lunch with a small group of alien friends. She had kimchi, which her mother had warned was very spicy. The other children each tried a tiny, tiny amount. Most couldn't handle it, but they were proud they had tried. Bormak oozed over to stand beside Tixavran. "I never thought I'd see the day when my daughter would ask to try spicy food." "Times are changing," Tixavran agreed. "You know what the funny thing is?" Bormak said. "We spent months worrying about how to keep human children safe. We thought they needed our protection, but they didn't need us to protect them. They needed us to understand them. And they needed to teach us something," Tixavran added, "about courage, about resilience, about how facing challenges makes us stronger." She watched as Junho helped a smaller Vrelian child reach a high climbing bar. The Vrelian made it, grinning with accomplishment. "We thought we were teaching humans how to be safe in our galaxy," Tixavran said softly. "But they're teaching us how to be brave in theirs." Bormak jiggled in agreement. "The galaxy is bigger with them in it. Scarier, maybe, but definitely bigger." That evening, as parents came to pick up their children, Tixavran reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. The incident reports had stopped being lists of problems and started being documentation of breakthroughs. The medical scans had become valuable research data. The cultural misunderstandings had transformed into learning opportunities. Hyun ran to her mother, covered in dirt and grinning. "Mommy, I made 3 new friends today, and I taught them how to do a somersault." "That's wonderful, sweetie," Jiwon said, brushing dirt from her daughter's hair. Minho showed his father a bruise on his knee. "I fell off the monkey bars, but I got back up and did it right the next time." "I'm proud of you," Day said, and he meant it. Juno carried a drawing made by his Clithian friend. "Tick made this for me. It's us going down the slide together." Borum took the picture carefully. "We'll put it on the fridge at home." Yunbi was the last to leave, still full of energy despite the long day. As Nari helped her put on her jacket, Yunbi turned to Tixavran. "Thank you for letting us be ourselves," the little girl said. Tixavran felt her antennae droop with emotion. "Thank you for teaching us that different doesn't mean wrong." After all the families had gone, Tixavran sat in her office and looked at her wall. On it hung the first incident report she had written, 30 pages about Minho eating the spike fruit. Below it were photos from the past months, children of different species playing together, learning together, growing together. Her communicator chimed. It was a message from the Coalition Education Board. 3 more stations wanted to implement integrated daycare programs based on her model. They wanted her advice on how to prepare for human children. She smiled and began composing her response. The first line was simple. Stop trying to change them. Start trying to understand them. The galaxy was learning, slowly, sometimes awkwardly, but genuinely. And at the heart of that learning were human children, these small, resilient beings from a death world called Earth. They were teaching the galaxy that strength came in many forms, that survival meant adapting without losing yourself, and that sometimes the scariest thing about the unknown was simply not understanding it yet. And somewhere on that playground tomorrow, another human child would probably eat something they weren't supposed to, climb something too high, or try something too dangerous. And Tixavrain would be there, datapad ready, understanding that this wasn't a problem to be solved. It was humanity being human, and that was exactly as it should be.